Chapter 1. Countdown to change. Larry Cruz sat cross-legged on his couch. A soft plaid blanket draped over his lap, watching the glowing numbers on the television tick down toward midnight. The muted hum of the New Year's Eve broadcast filled his living room, punctuated by bursts of laughter from the crowd in Times Square. He wasn't lonely, not even close. Larry liked quiet. He liked the way his house settled into silence after the day's noise faded, the way the wind whispered against the windows like an old friend. He reached for his glass of ginger ale, took a sip, and smiled faintly at the thought of resolutions. Every year, people promise themselves the moon, lose weight, find love, quit bad habits. Larry had never been big on resolutions. They felt like contracts destined to be broken. But tonight, something stirred in him, something that felt less like a resolution and more like a dare. The TV host shouted, 10, 9, 8, and the crowd roared. Larry counted along under his breath, his voice barely above a whisper. 7, 6, 5. He thought about his life, 34 years old, single, an accountant who worked remotely for a mid-sized firm. His certifications kept him tethered to spreadsheets and tax codes, but his home was his sanctuary. A modest ranch-style house on a quiet road, 3 bedrooms, a basement as big as the house itself. For 3. Larry's gaze drifted toward the hallway that led to the basement door. That basement had been a blank canvas for years, a space he used for storage and the occasional workout. But what if he turned it into something extraordinary? 2-1. Happy New Year! Confetti exploded on the screen. Larry raised his glass in a solitary toast, then set it down with a decisive clink. All right, he murmured. Let's do this. The idea had been simmering for years, tucked away like a secret indulgence. Larry loved bowling, always had. The rhythmic crash of pins, the satisfying weight of the ball in his hand, the neon glow of lanes under dim lights. He'd spent countless evenings at the local alley in his 20s, back when life felt wide open. But work, bills, and the slow creep of adulthood had pushed those nights aside. Now he wanted them back on his terms. He grabbed a notepad from the coffee table and started sketching. 2 lanes, side by side, a sleek bar top with drink stands, TV monitors for sports, lounge seating, a circular couch for conversation, bean bag chairs for fun. Neon signs splashed across the walls, dim mood lighting to set the tone. A Tron pinball machine because why not? A pool table, a slot machine that whistled like a train when it hit a win, no real money, just arcade coins in a pail perched on top. And the crown jewel, a refurbished jukebox, humming with classics. Maybe a few full-size arcade cabinets, Defender, Dig Dug, Asteroids. The ultimate game room. His game room. Larry stared at the sketch, a grin tugging at his lips. It was ambitious, maybe even ridiculous. But for once, he wanted something that was entirely for him. Chapter 2. The blueprint. Larry woke up the next morning with a strange sense of purpose humming in his veins. It wasn't caffeine, though the coffee brewing in the kitchen certainly helped. It was something else. Something bigger. He padded into the living room in his socks, mug in hand, and stared at the notepad he'd left on the coffee table. The sketch from last night looked like the fever dream of a man who'd spent too much time in bowling alleys and arcades. 2 lanes, a bar, neon signs, bean bags, pinball, pool table, slot machine, jukebox, video games. Larry chuckled softly. You're out of your mind, Cruz. But the grin stayed on his face. He sat down, flipped to a fresh page and started refining the plan. Measurements, costs, timelines. He calculated square footage like he was prepping for an audit. The accountant in him couldn't help it. Dreams were great, but budgets were sacred. By mid-morning, his laptop was open, tabs multiplying like rabbits. Bowling lane suppliers, neon sign vendors, arcade refurbishers. He even found a forum dedicated to home bowling installations, where enthusiasts debated oil patterns like philosophers arguing the meaning of life. Larry scrolled through a thread titled, DIY Bowling Alley. Worth it? The top comment read, only if you're insane or rich, preferably both. Larry snorted. Guess I'm halfway there. He bookmarked the thread anyway. The first big decision, flooring. Did he want authentic maple lanes or synthetic panels? Maple was classic but pricey. Synthetic was cheaper, easier to maintain. He opened a spreadsheet and started crunching numbers, muttering under his breath like a man negotiating with fate. Maple 12 grand. Synthetic 8. Neon signs, 2 grand if I don't go overboard. Bean bags. Okay, those are practically free compared to everything else. He paused, staring at the bean bag line item. Why was he so fixated on bean bags? He imagined his neighbors walking in, seeing the sleek bowling lanes, the polished bar, the glowing neon, and then a pile of bean bags like a college dorm exploded in the corner. Larry rubbed his chin. Maybe leather chairs, grown-up furniture. Then he pictured himself sinking into a bean bag after a long day, drink in hand, jukebox humming in the background. Bean bag stay, he declared. By noon, he had a full blueprint. 2-lane bowling alley with synthetic panels. Maple could wait for the lottery win. Bar top with chrome stools and a mini fridge. And neon signs, one shaped like a bowling pin, another that simply said, strike, in electric blue. Arcade corner, Tron pinball, Defender, Dig Dug, Asteroids. Pool table, classic green felt. Slot machine with train whistle jackpot. Because whimsy mattered. A jukebox loaded with everything from Sinatra to Springsteen. Bean bags, oversized, absurdly comfortable, in colors that clashed just enough to feel intentional. Larry leaned back, satisfied. It was ridiculous. It was extravagant. It was perfect. He placed his first order that afternoon. The jukebox. A refurbished beauty from a collector 3 states away. Polished chrome gleaming in the photos like a promise. Delivery in 2 weeks. When the confirmation email pinged his inbox, Larry felt a rush of adrenaline. This was real now. That night, he stood at the top of the basement stairs, staring down into the dim space below. Concrete floor, exposed pipes, a single bulb casting a lonely glow. Soon, he whispered, you're gonna be the coolest basement in town. He flicked off the light and headed to bed, already planning his next move. Chapter 3. The neighborhood watch. Larry had underestimated 2 things, the weight of a jukebox and the power of small-town gossip. The jukebox arrived on a crisp Saturday morning, delivered by a man who looked like he could bench press a Buick. Larry signed the receipt, thanked him, and then stared at the gleaming chrome beast sitting in his driveway like a trophy from another era. All right, Larry muttered, gripping the dolly handle. You and me, buddy. He wheeled the jukebox toward the garage, muscles straining, when a voice called out behind him. Larry! He froze. Slowly, he turned. 3 women stood at the edge of his driveway, bundled in winter coats, curiosity blazing in their eyes like searchlights. He recognized them vaguely, neighbors from down the street. The brunette in the middle had a sharp bob and an even sharper smile. The blonde beside her was petite, bright-eyed, and practically vibrating with excitement. The third, a tall woman with auburn hair, looked amused, arms crossed like she was settling in for a show. Morning, Larry said, gripping the jukebox like a lifeline. Morning, said the brunette. We've been wondering. She gestured toward the jukebox. What exactly are you doing in there? Larry blinked. Building something. The blonde leaned forward. Something? A game room, Larry said, the words tumbling out before he could second-guess them. Bowling alley, bar, arcade games. You know, fun stuff. There was a beat of silence. Then all 3 women erupted in delighted chatter. A bowling alley? In your basement? That's amazing. Can we see? Larry hesitated. His basement was still a work in progress. Bare walls, scattered tools, a neon sign glowing like a lone beacon. But their enthusiasm was disarming. He shrugged. Sure, it's not finished, but come on. They followed him down the stairs, voices bubbling like champagne. The basement smelled faintly of fresh paint and ambition. The neon bowling pin sign glowed electric pink against the concrete wall, casting a surreal light over the beanbags lounging in a corner like lazy cats. The women gasped in unison. This is incredible, said the brunette, spinning slowly to take it all in. You're turning this into a full-on entertainment zone, said the blonde, eyes wide. Larry smiled, a little sheepish. That's the idea. They peppered him with questions, where he got the jukebox, how he planned to install the lanes, whether he'd host parties. Larry answered as best he could, feeling oddly buoyed by their enthusiasm. For a guy who usually kept to himself, this sudden burst of attention was nice, strange, but nice. The auburn-haired woman grinned. You know, the guys are going to lose their minds when they hear about this. Larry chuckled nervously. Hope that's a good thing. Oh, it's a great thing, said the brunette. You're about to become the most popular man on the block. Larry wasn't sure if that sounded thrilling or terrifying. When they finally left, wishing him luck and promising to spread the word, Larry stood in the basement alone, grinning like a kid. The neon sign hummed softly, casting pink light over the beanbags. The jukebox gleamed in the corner like a promise. For the first time in a long time, he felt something stirring, a sense of possibility, of connection. And maybe, just maybe, this was only the beginning. Chapter 4. The men arrive. The knock came at 9 a.m. sharp the following Saturday. Larry was in the basement, measuring the space for the bowling lanes, when the sound echoed through the house like a summons. He climbed the stairs, wiping his hands on a rag, and opened the door to find 3 men standing on his porch. They looked like they'd stepped out of a hardware store catalog. Flannel shirts, work boots, grins that said, "We know something you don't." Larry recognized them vaguely from neighborhood barbecues he'd never attended. The tallest one, broad-shouldered with a salt and pepper beard, spoke first. Morning, Larry. Morning, Larry said cautiously. Can I help you? The man grinned. Actually, we're here to help you. Larry blinked. Help me? Yeah, said the second guy, shorter, stocky, wearing a baseball cap backward like he was perpetually ready for a pickup game. Our wives told us what you're up to. Bowling alley, arcade, the whole 9 yards. Sounds awesome. The third man, lean and wiry with a mischievous glint in his eye, added, and we figured you could use an extra set of hands. Or 6. Larry stared at them, rag dangling from his fingers. He wasn't used to this, people showing up, offering help without strings attached. His instinct was to politely decline, retreat to his comfortable solitude. But then he thought about the sheer weight of the bowling lane panels, the wiring for the neon signs, the logistics of moving a pool table down a flight of stairs. Ah! He cleared his throat. Yeah, that'd be great, actually. The men grinned like he'd just passed a secret test. 10 minutes later, Larry found himself in the garage with his new crew, surrounded by tools and good-natured banter. The salt and pepper guy introduced himself as Tom, the stocky one as Rick, and the wiry joker as Eddie. They were the kind of men who could build a deck in an afternoon and still have time for a beer before sunset. So, Tom said, surveying the basement door like a general planning an invasion. What's the game plan? Larry hesitated, then pulled out his blueprint. The men leaned in, eyebrows rising as they took in the details. 2 lanes. Rick whistled. You're not messing around. Bean bags. Eddie smirked. Classy. Larry felt his ears heat. They're comfortable. Hey, no judgment, Eddie said, grinning. I've got a recliner that looks like it survived a bear attack. Comfort beats style every time. They spent the morning hauling boxes, clearing space, and debating flooring options like seasoned pros. Larry found himself laughing more than he had in months. Tom told stories about his disastrous attempt to install a hot tub. Rick confessed he once tried to brew beer in his garage and ended up with something that tasted like regret. Eddie claimed he could fix anything with duct tape and sheer optimism. By noon, the basement looked less like a storage dungeon and more like the skeleton of a dream. The jukebox gleamed in the corner, neon signs stacked neatly against the wall, bean bags lounging like royalty awaiting their throne room. Larry stood back, wiping sweat from his brow, and felt something unexpected. Belonging. These weren't just neighbors anymore, they were teammates, co-conspirators in the grand plan. As they packed up for the day, Tom clapped Larry on the shoulder. You know, when this is done, you're hosting the first party. Larry chuckled nervously. Yeah, sure. Rick grinned. Kids welcome. Of course, Larry said, though the thought of sticky fingers on his jukebox made him twitch. Eddie winked. Better start stocking that bar, Cruz. You're about to become the most popular guy in town. Larry smiled, a little dazed. For a man who'd spent years working remotely, keeping to himself, the sudden surge of camaraderie was overwhelming and oddly wonderful. As the men left, promising to return next weekend, Larry headed back down to the basement. He flicked on the neon bowling pin sign, watched it glow electric pink, and whispered to the empty room, "Guess we're really doing this." Chapter 5. The Grand Reveal. By the time March rolled around, Larry's basement looked like something out of a retro fever dream. The bowling lanes gleamed under soft LED strips, the neon signs buzzed like electric candy, and the jukebox stood proudly in the corner, ready to belt out Sinatra at the push of a button. The bean bags lounged in their designated nook like royalty, and the slot machine waited patiently to whistle its train song victory. Larry stood at the bottom of the stairs, hands on his hips, surveying the kingdom he'd built. It wasn't perfect. There were still scuff marks on the walls and one stubborn bean bag that refused to look symmetrical. But it was his. His dream, his sanctuary, apparently his neighborhood's new favorite destination. Because tonight, the party was on. He'd sent out invites via text, simple, casual, game room reveal. Saturday, 6 p.m. Kids welcome. Bring your best bowling arm. He wasn't sure what to expect. Maybe a handful of neighbors, maybe a polite drop in and out. What he got was everyone, and their kids friends. At 6 sharp, the doorbell rang. Larry opened it to find Tom, Rick, and Eddie grinning like proud uncles, each carrying something. Chips, soda, a suspiciously large cooler. Hope you don't mind, Tom said, hefting the cooler inside. We figured you'd need reinforcements. Larry laughed nervously. Yeah, sure. Thanks. Behind them came a parade of families, laughter spilling into the house like sunlight. Coats piled up in the entryway, shoes scattered like breadcrumbs. Larry tried not to panic. He'd planned for a crowd, but this was a crowd. The basement reveal was met with gasps, cheers, and one kid yelling, "This is better than Disney," which Larry suspected was an exaggeration but appreciated nonetheless. The jukebox fired up with Johnny B. Good, bean bags were claimed like prize territories, and the arcade corner turned into a miniature war zone of high scores. The slot machine whistled every 5 minutes, sending kids into fits of giggles. Larry hovered near the bar, handing out sodas and quietly marveling at the chaos he'd invited into his life. Larry! The voice cut through the din. It was the brunette from the driveway, Sophie, he remembered now, making her way toward him with a smile that could power a small city. "This is incredible," she said, gesturing around. "You really did it." Larry rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, still can't believe it myself." Sophie leaned against the bar, eyes twinkling. "So tell me, why a bowling alley?" Larry hesitated, then shrugged. "Always loved bowling. Used to go all the time when I was younger. Figured, why not bring it home?" "That's awesome," Sophie said warmly. "You know, you might have just started something." Larry blinked. "Started what?" Before she could answer, Rick appeared, grinning like a man with a plan. "Larry, we've been talking. How about a neighborhood bowling league?" Larry stared. "A league? Yeah. Eddie chimed in from across the room, holding a slice of pizza like a trophy. Teams, schedules, maybe a trophy shaped like a beanbag chair. Larry laughed, but it came out a little strangled. Sounds fun. Except, I don't have a partner. Sophie's smile widened. Don't worry about that, she said, tone teasing. We'll figure something out. Larry wasn't sure if that was reassuring or terrifying. The party rolled on. Kids shrieking over arcade wins. Adults debating bowling techniques like philosophers. Larry found himself laughing, chatting, even dancing a little when the jukebox switched to twist and shout. For a man who'd spent years in quiet solitude, this was different, loud, messy, wonderful. As the night wound down and the last neon glow flickered against the bean bags, Larry stood in the center of his game room, heart full and mind buzzing. He'd built this for himself, but somehow it had become something bigger, something shared. And if the talk of a bowling league was serious, well, things were about to get interesting. Chapter 6. Sparks over strikes. The idea of a neighborhood bowling league spread faster than gossip at a bake sale. By Monday, Larry's phone buzzed with texts. Count us in. What's the team limit? Do we need uniforms? Someone even suggested a trophy shaped like a beanbag chair, which Larry suspected was Eddie's doing. Larry wasn't sure how this had happened. One minute, he was hosting a party. The next, he was apparently commissioner of a league he hadn't agreed to start. He sat at his kitchen table, sipping coffee and staring at a list of names scribbled on a notepad. 12 teams. Partner format. Everyone seemed thrilled except Larry, because Larry didn't have a partner. Saturday afternoon, the planning meeting was in full swing in his basement. Tom, Rick, and Eddie were debating oil patterns like they were prepping for the Olympics. Sophie was organizing sign-up sheets with military precision. Kids darted between bean bags and arcade machines, shrieking like caffeinated squirrels. Larry hovered near the jukebox, feeling like a man watching his life spiral into a sitcom plot. He was about to sneak upstairs when Sophie called out, "Larry, come here a sec." He approached reluctantly. Sophie grinned, eyes sparkling with mischief. "So," she said, lowering her voice, "we've got everyone paired up, except you." Larry rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, about that." "Don't worry," Sophie said, cutting him off with a wink. "I've got someone in mind." Larry froze. "Someone?" Before he could protest, Sophie waved toward the stairs. "Speak of the devil." Larry turned and nearly forgot how breathing worked. She was standing at the top of the steps, framed by the glow of the neon sign like a cinematic entrance. Tall, confident, with dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail and a smile that could melt steel. She wore jeans, a soft gray sweater, and an expression that said she was amused by everything and everyone. "Maya," Sophie announced, as if unveiling a masterpiece. "Meet Larry." Maya descended the stairs with easy grace, her eyes sweeping the room before landing on him. "So you're the guy with the basement." Larry blinked. Yeah, that's me." She smiled, slow and warm. "Nice work. This place is wow." Larry felt his ears heat. "Thanks. Took a while." Maya walked over to the lanes, running her fingers along the polished surface. "You know, I haven't bowled in years. Hope you're ready to carry the team." Larry blinked again. "Team," Sophie beamed. "You two are partners. Perfect match." Larry opened his mouth to argue, but Maya's laugh cut him off light, teasing, like wind chimes in summer. "Guess that makes you my coach," she said, eyes twinkling. "Better start training me." Larry swallowed hard. Sure. Training. Right." The rest of the meeting blurred. People debated league names. Pin Pals was a frontrunner. Kids fought over the slot machine. And Larry tried not to stare at Maya as she chatted easily with everyone. She had that rare quality, effortless charm without a hint of pretense. When she laughed, the sound curled around him like warm smoke. Later, as the crowd thinned and Sophie handed out schedules, Maya wandered over to the jukebox. She pressed a button, and the opening chords of Brown-Eyed Girl filled the room. "Classic," she said, swaying slightly to the beat. "You've got good taste." Larry managed a smile. "Thanks." It came with the machine. Maya grinned. "Still counts." She glanced at him, head tilted. "So, coach, when's our first practice?" Larry's brain scrambled for words. Whenever you want." "Tomorrow," Maya said, decisive. "Same time." Larry nodded, trying to look casual while his pulse did cartwheels. "Tomorrow works." "Great." She flashed him a smile that felt like sunlight. "See you then, partner." And just like that, she was gone. Up the stairs, out the door, leaving Larry standing in the neon glow, wondering what exactly he'd signed up for. Chapter 7. Enter the wild card. Sunday afternoon found Larry pacing his living room like a man awaiting judgment. He'd vacuumed the basement twice, polished the bowling lanes until they gleamed like glass, and even rearranged the bean bags so they looked casually inviting instead of college dorm chaos. He checked his watch. 2:58 p.m. Maya had said same time, which Larry assumed meant 3. He wasn't sure why his pulse was behaving like he'd just sprinted a mile. It was just bowling, just practice, just Maya. The doorbell rang. Larry nearly tripped over his own feet getting to it. Maya stood on the porch, bundled in a navy jacket, hair loose around her shoulders, smile easy and bright. She held a small tote bag like she was arriving for a weekend getaway instead of a bowling session. "Hey, coach," she said, stepping inside. "Ready to whip me into shape?" Larry swallowed hard. Yeah, sure. Come on down." The basement glowed like a neon dream. Maya paused at the bottom of the stairs, taking it all in again. "Wow," she said softly. "You weren't kidding about the details." Larry rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, I might have gone overboard." "Overboard." Maya laughed, dropping her bag on a beanbag chair. "Larry, this is amazing. You've basically built a private bowling paradise." Larry felt his ears heat. "Thanks." They started with warm-ups, Larry demonstrating proper grip and stance while Maya watched, amused. "So," she said, picking up a ball and testing its weight. "Do I get a pep talk? Something inspirational?" Larry blinked. Don't drop it on your foot?" Maya grinned. "Wow, truly motivational." She stepped up to the lane, swung the ball back, and let it roll. It veered left immediately, clattering into the gutter like it had a personal vendetta against pins. Maya turned, deadpan. "So, that's bad, right?" Larry bit back a laugh. Yeah, little bad. Guess I need more coaching." She winked. "Your job just got harder." The next hour was a mix of laughter, playful teasing, and increasingly ridiculous attempts at technique. Maya tried the granny-style roll at one point, declaring, "This is my signature move," before sending the ball spinning so slowly that Larry had time to hum an entire verse of Sweet Caroline before it hit the pins, knocking down two, which she celebrated like a championship win. Larry found himself laughing more than he had in years. Maya had that effect, turning mistakes into jokes, awkwardness into charm. She wasn't trying to impress him. She was just herself, and somehow that made Larry want to impress her even more. After a particularly disastrous throw that ricocheted off the bumper and nearly took out a bean bag, Maya collapsed onto the couch, laughing until tears shimmered in her eyes. "Okay," she gasped, wiping her face. "Clearly, I'm not destined for the pro circuit." Larry smiled, settling into the bean bag across from her. "You're improving." "Liar," Maya said, grinning. "But I appreciate the effort." She leaned back, gaze drifting to the neon glow above the lanes. "You know, this is really cool, Larry. Not just the basement. The whole idea. Doing something just for yourself." Larry shrugged, suddenly shy. "Figured it was time." Maya's eyes softened. "Good call." For a moment, the air shifted, quiet, warm, charged with something Larry couldn't quite name. Then Maya clapped her hands, breaking the spell. "All right, coach. One more round. Winner buys pizza." Larry grinned. "Deal." They bowled until dusk, laughter echoing off the walls like music. When Maya finally headed out, tossing him a playful "see you at league night, partner," Larry stood in the doorway long after her car disappeared down the street, heart thudding like a drum. He'd built this basement for himself. But suddenly, it felt like the start of something bigger. Chapter 8. League of Their Own. The first official night of the neighborhood bowling league felt like a small-town Super Bowl. Larry's driveway was lined with SUVs and minivans, headlights slicing through the dusk like spotlights. Inside, his basement buzzed with energy. Neon signs glowing, jukebox crooning Sweet Caroline, beanbags occupied by kids clutching sodas like trophies. Larry stood near the bar, clipboard in hand, wondering how his life had turned into this. He'd built a game room for quiet nights and personal indulgence. Now it was hosting 12 teams, complete with a sign-up sheet, a snack table that looked like a convenience store exploded, and Eddie wearing a t-shirt that read "pin or bust." "Larry!" Tom's voice boomed over the chatter. He strode up, grinning like a man who just won a bet. "You ready for the big kickoff?" Larry managed to smile. "As ready as I'll ever be." Tom clapped him on the shoulder. "You're a legend, Cruz. This league? Best idea ever." Larry didn't have the heart to admit it hadn't been his idea. The teams were a sight to behold. Couples in matching shirts, dads sporting wrist guards like they were prepping for a pro tour, moms corralling kids while debating team names. Someone had even brought a homemade trophy, a spray-painted gold bowling pin mounted on a wooden base, complete with glitter. Eddie announced it as the Strike Supreme, which sounded vaguely like a fast food item but earned cheers anyway. Larry scanned the crowd for Maya and found her near the jukebox, laughing with Sophie. She wore a simple black tee and jeans, hair pulled back, and when she spotted him, her smile lit up the room like a marquee. "Hey, coach," she said, sauntering over. "Ready to dominate?" Larry swallowed hard. Sure. Dominate." Maya grinned. "That's the spirit." Their first match was against Tom and his wife Linda, a duo who looked terrifyingly competent. Tom had brought his own ball, polished to a mirror shine, and Linda wore a glove that screamed serious business. Larry felt his palms sweat. "Relax," Maya whispered, nudging him as they stepped up to the lane. "Worst case, we lose and drown our sorrows in bean bags." Larry chuckled, tension easing. "Solid plan." The game began. Tom bowled like a machine, strike, spare, strike. Linda wasn't far behind. Larry held his own, landing a respectable spare and a strike that earned cheers from the peanut gallery. Maya bowled like Maya. Her first ball veered into the gutter with dramatic flair. Her second knocked down 3 pins, which she celebrated with a victory dance that involved jazz hands and a twirl. "Style points," she declared, grinning at Larry. "We're winning in spirit." Larry laughed, shaking his head. "Pretty sure spirit doesn't count on the scoreboard." "Then we need a new scoreboard." Maya shot back, eyes sparkling. By the 3rd frame, something shifted. Maya's throws improved, still unpredictable, but with flashes of brilliance. When she landed her first strike, the basement erupted in cheers. Maya turned to Larry, arms raised like a champion. "Did you see that?" she crowed. Larry grinned. "Hard to miss." She winked. "Told you I was a wild card." The rest of the night was a blur of laughter, friendly trash talk, and jukebox sing-alongs. Eddie tried to psych out opponents by quoting inspirational bowling movie lines that didn't exist. Rick spilled nachos on a beanbag and declared it battle damage. Kids ran a side tournament on the arcade machines, awarding themselves imaginary medals. Through it all, Larry felt something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of belonging. And every time Maya laughed, every time her hand brushed his as they swapped turns, that belonging deepened into something warmer, something that made his chest feel too small for his heart. When the final frame ended, Tom and Linda victorious, though Maya insisted they'd won the Vibe Award, Larry collapsed onto a beanbag, exhausted and exhilarated. Maya flopped down beside him, close enough that he could feel the heat of her shoulder. "Not bad for our first night," she said, smiling. Larry nodded, trying to ignore the way his pulse jumped. "Not bad at all." Maya tilted her head, eyes dancing. "Next week, we crush them." Larry grinned. Next week. And for the first time, he wasn't thinking about scores or trophies. He was thinking about her. Chapter 9. Gutter balls and heartstrings. The basement was quiet, except for the soft hum of the neon signs and the low croon of Sinatra drifting from the jukebox. Larry stood at the end of the lane, adjusting the oil pattern like a man preparing for battle. It was Thursday night. League night was still days away, but Maya had texted earlier. "Practice? I promise fewer gutter balls." Larry had replied before his brain could overthink. "Sure. Anytime." Now, he was wondering if anytime had been too eager. The doorbell rang. Larry jogged upstairs, heart thudding like a drum solo. Maya stood on the porch, hair loose, cheeks pink from the cold, wearing a hoodie that read "Bowling is life" in bold letters. "Nice shirt," Larry said, grinning. Maya smirked. "Thought I'd dress for the occasion." She stepped inside, eyes sparkling. "Ready to witness greatness?" Larry chuckled. "Define greatness." "Anything better than last time," Maya said, breezing past him toward the basement. They warmed up with easy throws, laughter bouncing off the walls like ricocheting pins. Maya's first ball curved dramatically into the gutter, earning a groan and a grin. "Okay," she said, hands on hips. "That was a warm-up. Doesn't count." "Sure," Larry teased. "Warm-up number 5? Don't sass the student." Maya shot back, wagging a finger. "Coach privilege only." Larry laughed, feeling the tension melt away. With Maya, everything felt lighter, like the world had dialed down its seriousness just for them. By the 3rd frame, Maya landed a strike. She spun around, arms raised, eyes shining. "Did you see that?" she crowed. Larry grinned. "I'm pretty sure those pins are going to feel that tomorrow." She winked. "Told you I was a wild card." They played 2 full games, trading jokes and mock trash talk. When Maya missed a spare by 1 pin, she collapsed dramatically onto a bean bag, declaring, "This lane is cursed." Larry offered to perform an exorcism with duct tape, which made her laugh so hard she nearly spilled her soda. Eventually, they settled into the bean bags, the jukebox humming softly in the background. Maya tucked her legs beneath her, gaze drifting to the glowing lanes. "You know," she said quietly, "this is really cool, Larry. Not just the bowling. The whole thing. Doing something just for yourself." Larry shrugged, suddenly shy. "Figured it was time." Maya's eyes softened. "Good call." Silence stretched, not awkward, but warm like a blanket. Larry felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. He'd built this basement for solitude, for escape. But now, sitting here with Maya, he wondered if maybe he'd built it for something else, something he hadn't even known he wanted. Maya broke the quiet with a grin. "So, what's next for the league commissioner? Championship trophy? Parade?" Larry chuckled. "Pretty sure the budget doesn't cover parades." "Bean bag thrown, then," Maya said, eyes twinkling. "For the winners." Larry smiled. "Sounds fair." When Maya finally stood to leave, she paused at the top of the stairs, looking back at him. "Same time next week?" she asked. Larry nodded, trying to look casual while his pulse did cartwheels. "Same time." She smiled, slow, warm, the kind that lingered long after she was gone. And when the door closed behind her, Larry stood in the neon glow, heart thudding, realizing something he hadn't dared admit until now. He didn't just want to win the league. He wanted her. Chapter 10. The big game, championship night had arrived, and Larry's basement looked like the set of a sports movie. minus the dramatic lighting and inspirational soundtrack. The neon signs buzzed. The jukebox crooned Eye of the Tiger, Eddie's Choice, obviously. And the snack table groaned under the weight of chips, pizza, and enough soda to power a small army. Larry stood near the lanes, clipboard in hand, heart thudding like a drumline. This was it, the final showdown. The Strike Supreme trophy glittered on the bar like a golden promise, its spray-painted glory shimmering under the lights. Eddie had added a crown made of glitter glue at the last minute, declaring it fit for royalty. The teams were hyped. Tom and Linda, the reigning titans, looked ready to crush souls. Rick and his wife wore matching shirts that said "Spare Me." Eddie's team had gone full costume, sporting bowling pin hats that wobbled dangerously every time they moved. And then there was Maya. She arrived in jeans and a simple white tee, hair pulled back, smile bright enough to outshine the neon. When she spotted Larry, her grin widened. "Ready to make history, coach?" she teased, grabbing her ball. Larry swallowed hard. Yeah, history." The first frame was chaos. Kids cheered like they were at a rock concert. Adults shouted encouragement and insults across the lanes, and Eddie attempted a dramatic slow-motion roll that ended in a gutter ball so spectacular it earned applause. Larry and Maya started strong. Larry with a clean strike, Maya with a spare that made her beam like she just won the lottery. "See?" she said, nudging him. "Told you I was improving." Larry grinned. "Wild card." "Always." Maya shot back, eyes twinkling. By the fifth frame, tension crackled like static. Tom and Linda were ahead by a slim margin, their precision bordering on terrifying. Larry felt the pressure mounting, palms slick against the ball. He stepped up, focused, released, and watched in horror as the ball curved into the gutter like it had a personal vendetta. The crowd groaned. Larry winced. "Well, that's embarrassing." Maya leaned in, voice low and teasing. "Don't worry, coach. I've got this." She stepped up, swung, and, miracle of miracles, landed a strike. The basement erupted in cheers. Maya turned, grinning like a queen. "See? Told you I'd carry the team." Larry laughed, relief flooding his chest. "Guess I owe you pizza." "Extra cheese," Maya said, winking. The final frame was a nail-biter. Tom and Linda were ahead by 10 points. Larry bowled first, strike. The crowd roared. Maya stepped up, calm as a summer breeze, and rolled her ball down the lane. It hit dead center, pins exploding like fireworks. Strike. The basement went wild. Eddie attempted a victory dance that nearly took out the snack table. Rick started chanting, "Bean bag thrown! Bean bag thrown!" Kids screamed like they just witnessed a superhero origin story. Larry turned to Maya, grinning so hard his cheeks hurt. "We did it." Maya smiled, eyes shining. "Told you we'd make history." Later, after the trophy presentation, complete with Eddie's glitter crown, and the chaos of cleanup, Larry found himself alone with Maya near the jukebox. The room was quieter now, bathed in soft neon glow. Sinatra crooned "Fly Me to the Moon," and for a moment it felt like the world had narrowed to just the two of them. Maya leaned against the jukebox, gaze warm. "You know," she said softly, "this was fun. More than fun." Larry swallowed, heart pounding. "Yeah, it was." She smiled, slow and sweet. "So, what's next, coach?" Larry hesitated, then took a breath. "Dinner? No beanbags. Real chairs." Maya laughed, the sound curling around him like music. "Deal." And when she reached out, fingers brushing his, Larry felt something click, like the perfect strike after a dozen gutter balls. Maybe this wasn't just a game. Maybe it was the start of something bigger. Chapter 11. After the strike, the basement was quiet now, the chaos of championship night reduced to echoes and crumbs. The neon signs still glowed softly, casting pink and blue halos across the polished lanes. The jukebox hummed a low Sinatra tune, "The Way You Look Tonight," as if the machine itself knew the mood had shifted. Larry stood near the bar, stacking empty soda cans into a neat pyramid, because doing something, anything, felt safer than standing still. He heard footsteps behind him and turned. Maya. She'd shed her hoodie, now in a simple tee, hair loose around her shoulders, eyes warm and bright. She smiled, slow and easy, like she had all the time in the world. "Hey, coach," she said softly. "Cleaning up." Larry gestured to the cans, trying to restore order. Maya chuckled, stepping closer. "Good luck with that." This place survived a full-scale neighborhood invasion. Larry grinned. "True. Might need a hazmat team for the beanbags." Her laugh curled around him like smoke, soft, lingering. She leaned against the bar, gaze sweeping the room before settling on him. "You know," she said, voice gentle, "you did something pretty amazing here." Larry shrugged, suddenly shy. "Just wanted a bowling alley." Maya shook her head. "You built more than that. You gave people a reason to come together. That's rare." Larry met her eyes, pulse thudding. "Didn't plan on that." "Sometimes the best things aren't planned," Maya said, her smile deepening. Silence stretched. Not awkward, but charged, like the pause before a perfect strike. Larry felt the weight of the moment settle in his chest. He wanted to say something, anything, but words scattered like pins. Maya saved him. "So, she said softly, tilting her head. About that dinner. Larry blinked. Dinner. You promised real chairs, she teased, eyes twinkling. Not bean bags. Larry laughed, relief flooding his chest. Right. Real chairs. I can do that. Good, Maya said, stepping closer. Close enough that he could feel the warmth of her, smell the faint trace of vanilla in her hair. Because I'm holding you to it. Larry swallowed hard. Deal. For a moment, they just stood there, the jukebox crooning, neon lights painting soft colors across their faces. Then Maya reached out, fingers brushing his hand. Light, tentative, like testing the water. Larry's breath caught. He turned his hand, lacing his fingers with hers. Her smile widened, slow and sweet, and before he could second-guess himself, he leaned in. The kiss was gentle, unhurried, a quiet strike after a dozen gutter balls. Warmth bloomed in his chest, spreading like sunlight through the cracks of a long winter. When they pulled back, Maya rested her forehead against his, whispering, "Guess we're a pretty good team." Larry smiled, heart pounding. Best team. Later, as they stood together in the neon glow, Larry realized something he'd never expected when he sketched that first blueprint on New Year's Eve. He'd built this basement for himself, but somehow it had become the place where everything changed. And for the first time in years, Larry Cruz felt like he'd hit more than a strike. He'd hit home. Chapter 12. A new year. A new chapter. The first snow of January dusted Larry's street like powdered sugar, soft and quiet under the pale morning sun. He stood at the kitchen window, coffee steaming in his hand, watching the world glow white. It felt like a reset, a clean slate, a fresh frame. Behind him, the house hummed with life. The jukebox downstairs was silent for now, but the memory of last night lingered like a favorite song. Maya's laughter, warm and bright, still echoed in his head. The kiss, soft, certain, played on repeat in his chest. Larry smiled, a slow curve that felt new and familiar all at once. His phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Maya. "Morning, coach. Hope you're ready for our next adventure." Larry typed back before his brain could overthink. "Always. What's the plan?" Her reply came seconds later. "Road trip. There's a legendary bowling alley 2 hours away. Neon lights, vintage vibes. Thought we'd check it out. You in?" Larry stared at the screen, heart thudding like a strike. A road trip. With Maya. "I'm in," he wrote, adding a smiley face that felt both ridiculous and perfect. 2 hours later, they were cruising down a snow-lined highway in Maya's car, the heater humming, classic rock spilling from the speakers. She drove with one hand on the wheel, the other tapping to the beat, her voice joining the chorus like she'd been born for road trips. Larry watched her, stealing glances when he thought she wouldn't notice. She noticed. "What?" she teased, eyes flicking to him. "Nothing," Larry said quickly, then added, "Just, glad you texted." Maya smiled, soft and knowing. "Me too." The bowling alley was everything she promised. Retro signs, chrome stools, lanes that gleamed under rainbow lights. They played 3 games, laughed until their sides ached, and shared greasy fries in a booth that smelled faintly of nostalgia. When Maya leaned across the table, chin resting on her hand, and said, "You know, this might be our thing," Larry felt something settle deep inside him. Not just bowling, not just the basement. Them. That night, back at his house, Larry stood in the basement, neon lights glowing like a heartbeat. Maya curled up on a bean bag, scrolling through her phone, humming along to the jukebox. Larry looked around, the lanes, the arcade games, the slot machine that whistled like a train, and realized something he hadn't seen before. He'd built this space for solitude, for escape, for himself. But now it was more than that. It was laughter and connection. It was community. It was Maya. It was home. As midnight approached, Maya glanced up, eyes warm. "Hey, coach," she said softly. "Happy New Year." Larry smiled, crossing the room to sit beside her. "Happy New Year." And when she reached for his hand, fingers lacing with his, Larry knew this wasn't just the start of a new chapter. It was the start of the best story he'd ever written. Chapter 13. Neon nights. Spring had settled over the town like a soft quilt, and Larry's basement was buzzing again. This time with the hum of laughter, clinking glasses, and the occasional triumphant whistle from the slot machine. The neon signs glowed brighter than ever, casting pink and blue halos across the polished lanes. The jukebox crooned, dancing in the moonlight, and for once, Larry wasn't hovering nervously near the bar. He was sitting on the circular couch, arm draped casually around Maya, watching the chaos unfold with a grin that felt permanent. The neighborhood league had wrapped weeks ago, but the spirit lingered. Tonight was a just-because party, no trophies, no scoreboards, just bean bags, pizza, and Eddie wearing a t-shirt that read "Bowling is my cardio." Rick was trying to teach a group of kids how to play Dig Dug, which mostly involved him losing spectacularly while they cheered. Tom was at the bar, mixing sodas like a man auditioning for a bartending show. "Your kingdom thrives," Maya teased, leaning closer so her voice cut through the din. Larry chuckled. "Didn't plan on being royalty. Sometimes the crown finds you," she said, eyes twinkling. Larry glanced toward the Strike Supreme trophy perched on the shelf, glitter crown still intact. Guess I'm stuck with it. Maya laughed, warm and bright. You wear it well. Later, as the party thinned and the jukebox switched to a slow tune, Larry wandered to the lanes with Maya at his side. The neon glow painted soft colors across her face, and for a moment, it felt like New Year's Eve all over again, except everything was different. Remember when this was just a sketch on a notepad? Maya said, nudging him gently. Larry smiled. Feels like a lifetime ago. And now? She asked, tilting her head. Larry looked around. The lanes, the arcade games, the beanbags scattered like lazy cats. Then he looked at her, and the answer came easy. Now it feels like home, he said softly. Maya's smile deepened, and when she reached for his hand, Larry laced his fingers with hers, feeling that quiet certainty settle in his chest again. As they stood together in the neon glow, laughter echoing faintly from the beanbag corner, Larry realized something simple and profound. He'd built this basement for himself, but in the process, he'd built something far greater: connection, community, and a love that felt as steady and true as a perfect strike. And as the jukebox hummed its last note, Larry Cruz knew one thing for sure. The best stories don't start with resolutions. They start with a spark and sometimes a bowling ball.